It is illegal to pour pesticides down the drain. The water treatment facility will not break down pesticide residue and it will ultimately end up contaminating water supplies. In addition, dumping pesticide on the ground will do the same. Therefore, it is best that the pesticide be used on a legal site by a person who knows how to use them safely. Packages of concentrated or diluted pesticides should not be placed directly into the garbage. If they can't be used according to label directions, you should then check to see if your community offers a collection event on a regular basis. California Waste Management and Silver State Disposal offer regular community waste collection events. Also in the state of California, the California Department of Agriculture offers free pesticide collection for pesticide industry representatives and California homeowners. Contact California Department of Agriculture Environmental Services for more information on how to utilize this service. As mentioned earlier, empty pesticide containers need to be cleaned thoroughly. Unless pesticide containers are refillable, you should not reuse them. For small, empty aerosol containers designed for homeowner use, they can be wrapped in several layers of newspaper and placed in the trash. This photograph demonstrates exactly what not to do prior to the time of pesticide container disposal. Typically, there are multiple options we need to consider when we make the decision to dispose of a pesticide container. Once a container is empty and it cannot be refilled, then it becomes a hazardous waste unless we completely rinse and puncture the container. In almost all instances, it is not legal to incinerate empty pesticide containers. Toxic smoke may result, which can create an air pollution problem. In many states, normal agricultural activities are exempt from some environmental laws, but pesticide container burning is not, because it is not considered a normal agricultural activity. Application equipment must be rinsed or cleaned out after each use, especially if pesticide equipment is not dedicated to one pesticide product. To properly clean equipment, we use as little water as is necessary, and then the resulting rinseate should be applied on a labeled site. Rinseate should never be collected. This results in the creation of hazardous waste which can no longer be used according to label directions because it has an unknown variety of pesticides in the mixture. Even the best preparation can't prevent all pesticide spills. Pesticide spills can occur during application, mixing, loading or cleanup. The next best strategy is to make sure you have supplies on hand to deal with small pesticide spills. If a major release occurs, you will also need to have emergency contact information to get assistance. This will mean contacting your supervisor and in some instances the Highway Patrol or the Division of Environmental Protection. In no circumstance should you leave a spill unattended unless it has been cleaned up. Until it is cleaned up, you need to keep people away from the spill, and when cleaning up the spill, you need to wear the protective clothing described on the pesticide label. In the state of California, you are required to carry, in your service vehicle, the personal protective equipment required by every pesticide label in your vehicle. Articles of protective clothing may include waterproof headgear, like a hard hat for spraying overhead, goggles to prevent splashes to the eyes, a dust mask, rubber gloves and boots, a long-sleeved shirt, pants or waterproof suit, and finally, a pesticide respirator. Again, please check the pesticide label for information on PPE requirements. Dealing with a spill indoor presents a unique problem. A pesticide spill indoor may require replacement of flooring material, especially carpet. Once the contaminated material is removed, it will be necessary to ventilate the building. Usually this means operating a fan for a period of time until the odor dissipates and there is little risk of breathing toxic vapors. By making sure the release of chemical has stopped and by confining the area of the spill, it will minimize the work that has to be done to clean it up. Some pesticides are corrosive, so it is important that the chemical residue be placed in a container made of non-corroding material. As stated earlier, do not ever wash the spill into the storm drain or into waterways. Carry a spill kit that contains absorbent material which can prevent the chemical from reaching water supplies. Many states require that pest control operators carry a spill kit. An easier way to remember the steps in cleaning up a pesticide spill is to remember the 3 C's: control, contain, and then clean up the pesticide spill. Controlling the source of the spill may include shutting off the spray or tipping up a leaking container. It may mean placing a leaking package into a bucket or larger container. Once this step is taken, contain the spill to limit its spread by using dirt to make a barrier or absorbent pad or worm once the spread of chemical is contained. Then the final step is to clean up the chemical and absorbent material. Once it is placed in a plastic bag or overpack, it can be disposed of, in most cases, as a solid waste. Again, this is true for smaller spills. Larger spills will require some additional work to clean up the spill and dispose of it. For larger spills, you will need to seek assistance. Absorbent materials include sawdust, dirt, cat litter and absorbent pads. Many states, including California, require pest control applicators to carry a spill kit in their service vehicle. As mentioned earlier, PPE required by the label must be available along with absorbent material, and at least a gallon of water, which is enough to wash the chemical from the skin. Equipment needed to collect and store the pesticide safely includes a broom, plastic bag, and a dust pan. Spill reporting is also required by pesticide regulatory agencies. Emergency dumps of concentrated pesticide as small or large volumes should be reported if human health or environmental contamination is threatened. Usually, small spills of diluted pesticide product do not need to be reported, as long as they are cleaned up completely. If pesticides are spilled on your skin and or clothing, drench with water, remove your clothing and shower as soon as possible. If you are dealing with a highly toxic pesticide product, you will need this immediately. If you do happen to spill a pesticide on your clothing, it is possible to wash a small quantity of pesticide out of them. In all situations, make sure you wash the contaminated clothing by itself. If a lot of chemical is spilled on the clothing, discard the clothing because it cannot be adequately cleaned. When pesticides are splashed into your eyes, immediately rinse them with clean water and rinse them for 15 minutes to remove all pesticide residue. Blinking at the same time you are rinsing the pesticide out of your eyes will remove the pesticide faster. An eye wash station should be available in greenhouses and indoor nurseries. Portable saline solutions are available that can be stored in a service vehicle. If a pesticide is inhaled, the victim needs to be moved to fresh air as soon as possible. Artificial respiration may be necessary if the person is not breathing. Carry a microshield in case mouth-to-mouth resuscitation is necessary. Call 911 and seek medical assistance immediately. Ingestion of a pesticide happens when an applicator smokes or eats before cleaning up after handling pesticides. If symptoms occur, you must immediately go to the pesticide label and review instructions for treating the exposure. Inducing vomiting may be the suggested treatment, but in almost every case, it will be required to seek medical assistance. The longer you wait to get help, the more of a chance that the victim will become seriously ill. First aid kits should be carried in the service vehicle for other different types of medical issues faced by the pest control operator. Make sure that when transporting a victim to a medical facility for assistance, you bring a copy of the pesticide label. Finally, know the phone number of poison control. 1-800-222-1222 is a nationwide number that you can call 24/7. For non-emergency questions you have about specific pesticides, the National Pesticide Telecommunications Network, NPTN, is available 24 hours as well. Safe pesticide handling practices must be followed whenever we use a pesticide product. However, for all pest control situations, there are solutions other than the use of a pesticide product. In other words, we have many options we may want to consider. In some situations, it may not be necessary to control a pest at all. The pest may be a nuisance or may only cause cosmetic damage. If it is then decided that some steps need to be taken to control a pest problem, then we should only consider using a pesticide when all other control options are exhausted. By utilizing Integrated Pest Management, or IPM, we identify all pest control options that may or may not include chemicals. We may want to use a combination of options or tools which will control pests in the safest manner, and we may be able to achieve long-term pest control instead of relying on pesticides only, which is a short-term approach. So what is IPM? Integrated Pest Management is really an intelligent approach where we are required to do some research to collect the options or tools we need to control a particular pest. Much of this work has already been done by persons who have similar pest control issues, and this information is easy to obtain on the internet. By using this information, we may be able to utilize safer or non-chemical control methods, instead of using the "this is always how it has been done" approach. The important thought here is IPM is a combination of preventative measures. Usually, one tactic or measure will not be enough to assure a long-term approach to pest management. We can exterminate pests, but we can control and reduce pest populations by focusing on preventative measures when we have that option available to us. If we only rely on one tactic, pesticide spraying for example, then we can't avoid being on a pesticide treadmill where pest populations are never reduced over the long run, and we are continuously spraying again and again with no improvement to health or the environment, and we see no reduction or cost savings in the amount of pesticide we use. What is the first step in any IPM approach to pest management? In every case, we must first positively identify the pest we are trying to control. This means that if we don't know for sure what kind of pest we have, then we need to seek help to identify the pest. There are many resources to do this, and these include the internet, the local cooperative extension office, or the Department of Agriculture or Health, to name a few. There are many brochures and books available as well to help you meet this challenge. So what is a pest? A pest is anything that competes with, injures or spreads disease to humans, domestic animals, desirable plants, structures or possessions. However, pests can also be an annoyance or degrade the aesthetic value of a resource. As mentioned earlier, not all pests need to be controlled, an example being a pest which annoys or degrades an aesthetic value of a resource for only a short period of time. Once we identify the target pest, we need to have an idea of what the population level is before the control measure is implemented so that we can determine if the control measure is successful after the treatment. Once we identify the pest and know something about its biology and life cycle, then we can determine if we need to control the pest or not. Usually we need to establish a control threshold such as the number of pests present or level of damage the pest inflicts on the host before we implement the control measure. If the pest population level or level of damage is below the threshold value, then we do not apply our pest control measure. Once the population level or level of damage is exceeded, then it is time to implement our pest control strategy. Having a toolbox of control options, we can then decide what steps to take after the treatment threshold is exceeded. Chemical and non-chemical approaches should be considered not only when the threshold is exceeded but in some cases before the time to prevent pest populations from exceeding the threshold. Experience will help you evaluate and decide when the best time to implement a control option will be. Preventative options can be used prior to reaching a treatment threshold, and when it is decided that a chemical is our option of choice, we need to select the least toxic alternative. After we exercise our treatment option, we then look at the pest population afterwards to decide if the treatment option or options work. This is the evaluation stage and gives us an opportunity to modify our approach if necessary. Education is a very important step when working with affected parties so that they don't lose patience. Understanding why a certain approach to pest control is used and an understanding of the results must be communicated to the persons who have the most at stake. Most of the time, there is no magic bullet which will instantly control a pest. IPM is an approach with the ultimate result of achieving long-term control. Some non-chemical approaches to pest control and preventative measures include sanitation, cultural control methods and mechanical controls. If we limit the availability of food and water to pest populations, we can limit their growth and development. Insect pests need shelter and hiding places, so by removing harborage, we control insect populations. Cultural controls include things like improving plant health so that plants can resist a pest infestation. Mechanical controls include removing pests through manual means such as hand pulling, mowing or trapping. Cultural controls also include the cultivation of plant varieties which resist pests. Biological control measures include the introduction of predators. Chemical control measures usually suppress pest populations but can sometimes be used to prevent pest problems from occurring. For example, the introduction of a fungicide when environmental conditions will encourage disease development will prevent blight from developing in potato crops. Always use the least harmful option available to us at the same time trying to control our costs of pest control. This image demonstrates what is called the IPM action hierarchy of treatment. In every case we start at the bottom of the pyramid and we work our way up until we find a control measure or combination of measure which work. By excluding pests and communicating control strategies to the persons who need the pest controlled, we can avoid the development of infestations. Physical and mechanical measures like sticky traps and barriers to exclude pests work well in many situations. Biological controls work but usually take some time to be effective. Once we reach the chemical control level, we need to select a reduced risk pesticide first. These include growth regulators or repellents. These generally are slow-acting. Finally, if we don't see the desired results from the previous options, we can then select a conventional chemical which can control the pest. If we reach the apex of the pyramid and we don't control the pest, we can usually identify the source of failure. These are all of the reasons for failure. If chemicals fail, it usually means we did not use it at the right time. We must look at each of these elements during the evaluation stage to modify our pest control strategy.